All right, so get this. A farmer in Mexico, like, chops off a rattlesnake's head,
Oh, okay.
but
Yeah.
then he picks up the head and gets bitten.
Oh, wow.
Sounds crazy, right? Like something straight out of a horror movie.
Yeah.
But it actually happened.
Oh, no kidding.
And we're going deep into the science behind how that's even possible today.
I mean, it really shows you just how much we don't know about, nature
Exactly.
and like how snakes work.
Yeah, so we're using this biologist's YouTube video breakdown to help us out.
Okay.
First things first, the video shows the farmer, like right after the bite.
Uh-huh.
He's sucking on the wound, spitting, panicking, the whole 9 yards.
I bet, yeah, the biologist in the video actually makes a joke about how those reactions, like, don't really help.
Oh, really?
It's kind of a funny moment, but it just shows you that, like, when it comes to snake bites, we don't always do what's best.
Yeah, instinct isn't always right.
Right, exactly.
But let's get back to the science here.
Okay.
How can a snake bite after his head's gone? It's like a monster or something.
Right. Well, it all has to do with these things called ganglia.
Ganglia.
Yeah, they're these clusters of nerves that are found like all throughout a snake's body,
Okay.
not just in the brain.
So it's not just like the brain controlling everything.
No, it's like think of it like how your knee jerks when the doctor hits it.
Oh,
You
okay.
don't even think about it, it just happens.
Right.
It's like a reflex.
Okay, so these ganglia are like little mini brains all over the snake's body.
Yeah, basically the biologist even compares it to a headless chicken running around.
Oh, wow.
A little gruesome,
Yeah.
but you get the idea.
Yeah, I get it. So these ganglia can control basic movements like biting.
Exactly, even without the head.
Wow, that is wild.
Yeah.
But okay, so now I'm wondering, was the bite even venomous?
Oh, good question.
Like, can a snake still produce venom without a head?
Well, that's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
Not every snake bite injects venom. Yeah, sometimes it's just a warning.
Huh.
What we call a dry bite.
So like a warning shot.
Exactly.
Okay.
Like back off.
Makes sense.
But in this case, the biologist thinks it probably was a venomous bite.
How come?
Well, you gotta look at how the snake was acting before.
Okay.
And rattlesnakes are actually known to kind of conserve their venom.
They don't want to waste it.
Exactly.
Wow. So even without a head, this snake was still dangerous.
Definitely.
Man, this deep dive is full of surprises.
Yeah.
But before we move on, I think it's important to talk about how we interact with wildlife,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like the biologist points out that the farmer probably killed the snake out of fear.
Right. Unfortunately, that's a pretty common reaction.
Yeah, but what I like is that he doesn't just say, don't kill snakes.
Right.
He uses this whole thing as a way to talk about, like, understanding snakes and their habitats.
Exactly.
It's all about respect and education.
Yeah, like knowing how to avoid those situations in the first place.
Right, exactly.
It's not just about not killing snakes. It's about understanding them.
Yeah, he even talks about how removing snakes from, like, an ecosystem
Right.
can actually cause more problems,
Exactly, like more rodents.
which then mess with agriculture.
Exactly, it's all connected.
Yeah, messing with one part of the system can have consequences you don't even think about.
Totally.
Wow. Okay, so we've got this crazy incident, a deep dive into snake biology, and a reminder to respect nature.
That's right.
All in one.
All in one.
But I want to go back to the bite for a second.
All right.
If the snake isn't, like, consciously choosing to bite,
Right.
how does it even work?
Well, that's where those ganglias come in again.
Oh, right.
Remember, they control those basic reflexes. So even though the snake isn't thinking in the, traditional sense,
Okay.
its body is still reacting to stimuli.
So if the farmer hadn't picked up the head?
It probably wouldn't have bitten.
Oh, wow.
It's a purely reactive response.
Makes sense.
In fact, the biologist points out that venomous snakes, like rattlesnakes, are pretty careful with their venom.
Yeah, it's their main weapon, right?
Exactly.
They got to use it strategically.
Exactly.
You know, it's interesting. This whole thing happened because of a misunderstanding.
What do you mean?
Well, the farmer saw the snake as a threat,
Right.
something to be eliminated.
Right.
But what if he understood snake behavior better?
Yeah.
Like, what if he knew that snakes are usually more scared of us than we are of them?
Right.
Maybe the whole thing could have been avoided.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to that, education and awareness thing.
Right,
The
right.
more we know about snakes, the less we fear them.
And that fear is often what leads to these conflicts.
Exactly. So instead of just believing those myths and misconceptions,
Yeah,
let's learn about these creatures, their behavior, their role in the ecosystem.
exactly. Because as we've seen, even a decapitated snake can teach us a lot.
Yeah, about the wonders and the dangers of nature.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
So back to the The decapitated snake bite thing?
Oh, right.
We talked about those nerve clusters, the ganglia.
Uh-huh.
But what about the venom itself? Like, is it still being produced even with no head?
Well, the venom glands are in the head,
Right.
but they're connected to muscles that squeeze the venom out.
So those muscles could still be working even with the head detached?
Yeah, exactly. And from the video, the biologist seems to think there was probably still a good amount of venom in the glands.
Wow. So even though it was, decapitated, the snake was still dangerous.
Absolutely. And that brings us to something important about snake bites.
Okay.
Not all bites are the same.
What do you mean?
Well, you might think every snake bite is venomous, right?
I guess so, yeah.
But that's not always true.
Oh, really?
Yeah, sometimes a snake will bite, but not inject any venom.
Huh. Why would he do that?
It's a warning. We call it a dry bite.
So like a warning shot.
Exactly.
Okay.
Like, hey, back off.
Makes sense. Doesn't want to waste its venom.
Right, venom is really important for snakes.
Yeah, for hunting and stuff, right?
Exactly, for subduing prey
Yeah.
and for self-defense.
It's like their weapon.
Exactly, it's a complex mix of toxins.
And it can do different things depending on the snake.
Right, different venoms have different effects.
So, okay, let's say someone does get bitten by a venomous snake.
Uh-huh.
How do you know if it's a dry bite or not?
That can be tricky. Sometimes you see the fang marks, but not always.
And the symptoms can be different too, right?
Exactly. It depends on the venom and how much was injected.
So what should you do if you get bitten by a snake?
The most important thing is to get medical attention immediately.
Okay.
Don't try any home remedies.
Like sucking the venom out.
Yeah, that can actually make it worse.
Right, I've heard that.
Leave it to the professionals.
Okay.
They can figure out what's going on and give you the right treatment.
Like anti-venom.
If needed, yeah.
So going back to the farmer in the video, we know he got bitten by the head.
Right.
Do we know if it was a dry bite or a venomous one?
The video doesn't say, unfortunately.
Okay.
But based on how the snake was acting before and the fact that rattlesnakes tend to conserve their venom,
Right.
the biologist thinks it was probably venomous.
That's pretty scary.
It is. It just shows you shouldn't underestimate even a decapitated snake.
Yeah, for sure.
And it reminds us to be cautious and respectful around all snakes.
Speaking of respect, the biologist made an interesting point about how snakes are misunderstood
Oh, yeah.
and feared.
Right. He said they aren't naturally aggressive.
So why do they bite?
Usually it's self-defense.
Oh, okay.
They feel threatened.
That makes sense.
So if you see a snake in the wild,
Yeah.
best thing to do is just give it space.
Don't try to, handle it.
Yeah, don't go near it, remember. It's probably more afraid of you than you are of it.
And what if you find one in your yard or something?
Call a wildlife removal expert.
Okay.
They know how to safely relocate the snake.
No DIY snake wrangling.
I wouldn't advise it.
Good advice. It's interesting how this whole thing started with, a scary incident,
Right.
but it's turned into a conversation about understanding and respecting nature.
I agree. The biologist has used this story to teach us about snakes.
Yeah, about their biology, conservation,
Exactly.
and how we can live alongside them.
Right. It's been really interesting and informative.
I'm finding myself less scared of snakes now
That's great.
and more curious about them.
Yeah, knowledge is power.
That's true. Okay, let's shift gears a bit.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about venomous snakes,
Uh-huh.
but what about the ones that aren't venomous? Do they still pose any risks?
That's a great question, and one we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll talk about the dangers of non-venomous snake bites, how to take care of those wounds, and the surprising ways even those snakes play a role in the ecosystem.
Can't wait. Sounds interesting.
Yeah, it should be good.
Okay, so we're back, and we've talked about venomous snakes, but what about the ones that aren't venomous? I mean, are they totally harmless?
Well, not always. Even a bite from a non-venomous snake can still be risky.
Oh, really? How come?
Well, any bite can cause injury, right?
Yeah, I guess.
You got the puncture wounds, the tearing of the skin, possible bruising.
Right, the teeth.
Exactly. And just like any other wound, it can get infected.
So you got to clean it and stuff, right?
Exactly. Soap and water, antibiotic ointment, bandage it up.
Makes sense. So even if it's not a venomous snake, you can't just ignore a bite.
Right, definitely not.
Okay, so they might not have venom, but those teeth can still do some damage.
Exactly. But I think there's more to it than that.
What do you mean?
I think we tend to see non-venomous snakes as less important,
Oh, like less interesting?
Right. But they actually play a really important role in the ecosystem.
Oh, interesting. Like what?
Well, they often eat rodents and other small animals,
Okay.
which helps to keep those populations under control.
Right, so it doesn't get out of control.
Exactly. And that's good for agriculture.
Right. Because rodents can eat crops and stuff.
Right. And it can also help with disease control.
Oh, so...
The rodent carry diseases,
Oh,
that can
all
be
right, so
harmful
get
to
this.
humans.
A farmer
So even though
in
they
Mexico,
might not be
like,
as
chops off a
flashy
rattlesnake's
as
head,
venomous
Oh, okay.
snakes,
but then he picks up the
Right.
head and
these
gets bitten.
non-venomous
Oh,
species are still
wow.
super important.
Sounds crazy,
Exactly.
right?
They
Like
all have
something
their
straight out of a
place.
horror
And we need to
movie.
Yeah.
appreciate that.
But it
Exactly.
actually happened.
And that brings
Oh,
us
no
back
kidding.
to what
And we're
the
going
biologist
deep
was saying
into
about
the
respect and
science
understanding.
behind
Right,
how that's
for
even
all snakes.
possible today.
Yeah. Venomous or
I mean,
not,
it really shows you
they
just
deserve our
how
consideration.
much we
He
don't
really
know
wants us to move past
about,
that fear, doesn't he?
nature.
Yeah,
Exactly.
he does,
And,
and
like,
it's
how snakes work.
amazing
Yeah,
how he
so we're
used
using this
one
biologist's
incident
YouTube
the
video
farmer and the
breakdown to
snake.
help
to
us out.
teach us
All right.
so
First
much.
things
About
first, the
snakes,
video
about
shows the
respecting
farmer.
nature.
Exactly.
It's
Right
pretty
after
cool.
the bite.
It really
He's
shows
sucking
the
on the
power
wound,
of
spitting,
curiosity.
panicking,
Yeah,
the
and how
whole
looking
9 yards.
deeper can
I
lead
bet, the
to,
biologist in the
like,
video actually
a
makes
whole
a
new
joke about how
understanding.
those reactions
Exactly.
You know, it's
like,
funny.
don't
We
really help.
started
Oh,
with
really?
this
That's kind of a funny
crazy
moment,
horror
but
movie
it
type
just shows you that,
story.
like, when
But
it comes
we
to
learned
snake
so much
bites,
more than just
we
about
don't
snake
always
bites.
do its best.
Yeah,
It's true. We learned
instinct
about
isn't always
snakes,
right.
ecosystems,
exactly.
But
the
let's
importance of
get back to the
respect.
science here.
It's been a
How can a
wild
snake
ride.
It
Bite
has.
after his
Thanks
head's
for joining
gone.
us on this
It's
deep
like a
dive. I hope
monster
you
or
learned
something.
Right.
something
Well,
new.
it all has
Yeah,
to
me
do with these
too.
things called
And maybe
ganglia.
gained a new
Yeah, they're
appreciation
these
for snakes.
clusters of
Hopefully.
nerves
And
that are
remember,
found, like,
next time
all
you see
throughout
a
a snake's
snake,
body.
give it the
Okay.
respect
Not
it
just in the
deserves.
brain.
Absolutely.
So it's not
Keep your
just
distance,
like the brain
admire it from
controlling
afar,
everything.
and appreciate
No,
its place
it's like,
in nature.
That's
think of
great
it like,
advice.
you
And
know
on
how
that
your knee
note,
jerks
we'll wrap things
when
up.
the doctor
Sounds
hits
good.
it.
Thanks for
Oh,
listening.
They don't even
Stay
think about it. It
curious
just
and
happens.
keep
Right.
It's like a
exploring.
reflex.
Okay,
Until
so these
next time.
ganglia are like little mini brains all over the snake's body.
Yeah, basically the biologist even compares it to a headless chicken running around.
Oh, wow.
A little gruesome,
Yeah.
but you get the idea.
Yeah, I get it. So these ganglia can control basic movements like biting.
Exactly, even without the head.
Wow, that is wild.
Yeah.
But okay, so now I'm wondering, was the bite even venomous?
Oh, good question.
Like, can a snake still produce venom without a head?
Well, that's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
Not every snake bite injects venom. Yeah, sometimes it's just a warning.
Huh.
What we call a dry bite.
So like a warning shot.
Exactly.
Okay.
Like back off.
Makes sense.
But in this case, the biologist thinks it probably was a venomous bite.
How come?
Well, you got to look at how the snake was acting before.
Okay.
And rattlesnakes are actually known to kind of conserve their venom.
They don't want to waste it.
Exactly.
Wow. So even without a head, this snake was still dangerous.
Definitely.
Man, this deep dive is full of surprises.
Yeah.
But before we move on, I think it's important to talk about